I recently spent a weekend at a celebrity's luxury villa in Europe, and he owns properties all around the world, giving him countless options of where to live no matter what happens. And that inspired me to put together the ultimate Plan B real estate plan. If you could buy properties anywhere in the world to give yourself total freedom, where would it be? Let's get started. And if you're from North America, one of the first places that I would add to my real estate diversification plan is right next door in Mexico. Because Robert Kiyosaki told our Nomad Capitalist live audience that when things get bad, you have 3 days to get somewhere safe. I think Mexico is increasingly going to be a safe haven. It is going to increasingly be neutral. I think Mexican residents and the potential to lead to citizenship, which is a pretty good citizenship, is a pretty good asset to have, and it's a pretty good country to be in. Having property in Mexico can not only help you get residence, although not really needed, but it is diversification in a country that is increasingly valuable to Americans. You have beautiful areas. A lot of Americans and Canadians are going to Baja, they're going to Punta Mita, they're going all over the country. If you own property on the coast, you'll need to own that in a bank trust. That's relatively straightforward. But for me, especially if you're from the United States, being able to have access to a country right next door and having a home in that would be part of an ultimate Plan B. And I'm going to give you more places where I would own real estate for not only a great lifestyle, but as a great Plan B. Some come with free residence permits and even citizenships, and some are in tax-friendly countries to where you can save more of your own money. I'll get to that in a minute, but we're actually putting together a very intimate, small group who want to spend 3 days with me and some of the key members of my team making a Plan B for how to have properties, how to have residence permits, how to have citizenships. And this is bigger than the plan service that we create for clients remotely. If you want to handle your taxes, if you want to handle a holistic plan, we already do that for folks. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com. But if you'd like to spend 3 days in the field with me and my team and do some really luxurious stuff, exploring the opportunities that are available for a Plan B, go to nomadcapitalist.com/mastermind. We're opening this up right now for a small group, probably 3 or 4 people, at a higher price point than the plan service. But if you want to be in person and do this together with me, go to nomadcapitalist.com/mastermind and learn more. Now, let's talk about one place where a lot of people want to have a home, and that's in Europe. That's where I spent time in this luxury villa. You can buy in, let's say, parts of Italy, hundreds of acres if you want. You can buy entire towns and renovate those. You can do that in parts of Spain. You can buy land. You can go to parts of Greece. Lots of Southern Europe has real estate that is still of an incredible value. And while prices in Portugal have gone through the roof thanks to their golden visa program over the years, Spain, Italy, Greece, not saying these are the best investments, but if you want a lifestyle and you want a different place to go, there are areas you can kind of be away from it all. And so if you're thinking, hey, I'm from the US or Canada or Australia, I'd rather be in Europe where I can move in different directions if something happens, but I want that laid back lifestyle, you can get some beautiful properties for a lot less than you pay in California or in Australia in a place in Southern Europe. But what I would do looking for the ultimate Plan B is, number one, what kind of residence permit does it get me? And so in places in Southern Europe, you have Greece, for example, you get a residence permit. Spain, you get a residence permit by buying property. Italy is talking about that, but you don't really need the real estate to get residence if you want it. Portugal has gotten rid of that. But those countries have some level of tax friendliness to where if you ever wanted to live there full time, they have tax incentives, particularly Italy and Greece, to a lesser extent Portugal, and to a much lesser extent Spain. You can go there and you could potentially reduce your taxes dramatically, even though they're technically high tax countries, but not for foreigners coming in who haven't lived there before. One place that is certainly detached from the mainland, that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing. Ireland, you can buy property that does not allow you to get a residence permit, and property is very expensive, certainly in Dublin. But if you want a place that is relatively safe, you open the back door, the kids run outside, you have more of that in Ireland. It's an English-speaking country. You can get a residence permit through other means if you want. And if you were to live there full-time, you can have tax friendliness and become a citizen. If you live there, obviously you already speak the language. So Europe is one place that I would look at, and there's so many options it'd be hard to nail down. Maybe you have a claim to citizenship by descent from someone in your family, and you can become Hungarian or Slovak or Czech or Polish, and maybe you want to have a property there just to have as a connection to that ancestry and to pass down throughout the generations. you can do that too. Now, the third place I'm looking at my plan B property is somewhere in South America. So we have Mexico. That's next door to where I'm at. I want to find somewhere with a little bit more space. Now, I have an apartment in Bogota. I'll spend a week or two a year there, and I'll let other people use it when I'm not there. I actually think Colombia is underrated. I think it will become one of the better economies in the next 10 to 20 years. But let's talk about if you want wide open land. What's great about Latin America is by and large, foreigners can own land. Next door to Colombia, it has taken a left turn, but I follow the Doug Casey principle of what he talked about living in Argentina. Yeah, they kind of leave you alone if you are the wealthy foreigner. Ecuador is a country where you can get a residence, and if you wanted to live there, not only if you're paying tax somewhere else, do you have a really good tax incentive? Even if you're not paying tax somewhere else, it's not bad. And you can work towards citizenship in a matter of years. It is a totally different kinds of country, which I think for an ultimate plan B, I want to have a passport in my portfolio like Ecuador. Maybe I'm American or Canadian, and maybe I get my Polish citizenship that allows me to live anywhere in the European Union whenever I want and travel anywhere I want. I'd like to have something like Ecuador in the portfolio that's just lightweight and they're not going to bother me, and I can go and I can buy 200 acres for $300,000 somewhere, and maybe I'll have a stream going through my property, or I'll have monkeys, or I can build something very cheaply. And there's a lot less bureaucracy in terms of building than what I may find somewhere else. And I can just be totally detached and have that plan B, self-sufficient property in case something happens. Other people are talking about Paraguay. People want to be as far away from the chaos in the rest of the world as possible. You don't get much further away than Paraguay. Incredibly cheap property in Paraguay. They have a residence program that requires practically no investment. There's a permanent residence program that requires a mid-five-figure investment. And you can work towards citizenship again if you were to live there in a short number of years. In either case, you'll need to learn some Spanish, so that's certainly something that would give you greater diversification. But Paraguay is a real up-and-comer. Get residence through buying property, and if you want that citizenship, you can work towards that. If you want a bit more of an upscale experience in South America, one place I've talked to the gentleman I was meeting with was in Uruguay. Far away from it all. Great quality passport if you want to spend a few years there. You will need to integrate into the culture and actually spend time there to get that passport. They've called it the Switzerland of South America. It is very small. There's not a lot going on, but if you like that, beautiful views, economically stable, one of the more free countries in that region, beats even countries like the US in some metrics. And so that's going to be a higher price point, but it's going to give you the same access to residence and to citizenship. And by the way, Uruguay and Paraguay in particular, if you ever wanted to live there full time, can be very, very tax friendly, at least for a large number of years. Where I also want to have Eastern Europe, I believe one of the freedom destinations. We've had a lot of particularly Australians and New Zealanders who've moved to Eastern Europe over the years because they say, hey, there's a lot of soft freedom there. Westerners are used to hard freedom. It's written here in the Constitution. Politicians don't always follow that. In Eastern Europe, I think people are used to just being more independent. They do things the way they should. The government, everything's a little bit more laissez-faire in real life. Now, Turkey, if you want to call it Eastern Europe, you can get citizenship by investment by buying a property. That can be an apartment in Nişantaşı in Istanbul. That can be a beautiful villa somewhere. So Bodrum is where the Turkish celebrities hang out. Antalya is a little bit more mass market. There's plenty of areas all around. You can get incredibly cheap properties in some of these areas. Even Istanbul, the prices have gone up since the Russia-Ukraine war, but it was one of the cheapest cities in the world. And I don't entirely want to bet against a megacity in a country with a large domestic population that has increasingly built up its manufacturing sector and its agricultural sector to become more of a regional player. In a multipolar world, I think Turkey has some influence. I think if you're a dual citizen with Turkey, that's something that potentially for many people is interesting. And so that's a way you can get citizenship rather quickly by buying a property. You can also get a residence permit by buying a cheaper property if you don't want to spend mid six figures. And they're talking about rolling out a golden visa. In traditional Eastern Europe, so the Balkans, Serbia is certainly a hub. Property prices are not really that cheap anymore. Rental prices have gone through the roof since the war because a lot of Russians, for example, have gone there. But I think it's a relatively neutral place. And again, Serbia is talking about rolling out a simplified citizenship program that doesn't even require you to learn Serbian. We'll see how that comes along. And if you want to learn more about programs like that, just leave a comment below and we'll know that you're interested. But Serbia, right next to Europe, and so we might have a home somewhere in Europe. Maybe we have a home, maybe we've got a ski chalet in Andorra. Maybe we've got a summer home somewhere in Spain. I'm not a big fan of investing in Spain, but maybe it's a lifestyle thing for you. Or Italy, Montenegro. right down the coast from Croatia, where a lot of people go. It's not the cheapest place because they have the euros, but they have a beautiful yacht club, lots of services, lots of things to do. You get a residence permit by buying property, and if you want to live there, they'll keep renewing it for you. I think, that is, as a NATO country, might be interesting to some folks. Serbia, very much just, doing their own thing, though. We're at the door of Europe, but we're not going to follow what Europe does. We're going to be our own country. And I think it's not a bad thing. Their passport's one of the best performing passports in terms of growth in the last 10 to 12 years. It's become a really top quality tier B plus passport. Albania is the bargain in that region. If you want some of the cheapest property left in Europe, there it is in Albania. Beautiful coastal properties, much less development. Perhaps some of that will come in the years to come. I think places like Georgia have become more expensive. The time to buy was when we talked about it years ago. Certainly there's beautiful areas in Georgia. If you like food and wine, that could be a place to go. Buying vineyards in Georgia could be interesting. But more restrictions on land ownership there. So I think the Balkans perhaps would be my choice if I had to pick one, even though I really do love Georgia and the food and the wine. I would also have something in Southeast Asia. So could you have a plan B in, let's say, Korea? They've just jacked up the price for real estate investment to get a residence permit into 700 and some thousand US dollars, so it's not cheap. I know people who've done that. I perhaps think Southeast Asia is a bit more laissez-faire, relatively open for immigration, relatively tax-friendly if you ever wanted to live there full-time. Malaysia stands out to me because foreigners can own land. It's one of about 4 countries in Southeast and East Asia where foreigners can actually own the land underneath. And so I happen to enjoy living in Kuala Lumpur, have 2 properties there, but you can live in Penang. A lot of Australians and folks who like the beach, they go to Penang. You can't buy, there's some properties that are designated for kind of what are called boomy lands, but most places you can own land, and there's lots of coast, you could develop something, a lot of opportunities in Malaysia, tax-friendly, immigration-friendly. The immigration has become a bit more expensive in terms of putting money into the bank and having some income, but I think a very attractive place, English speaking. We're not trying to get citizenship in Asia because it's not really the game, but I think very, very friendly people, and if things are happening in the world, I'd like to be around friendly people with good conditions. I would lastly add some kind of exotic location, something really far away from it all. So, Malaysia obviously is well connected. You've got consumer culture. That in your Western Europe place, those are going to be the places where, hey, my country's going in the wrong direction. The taxes are going up. There's civil unrest. Who knows what's happening? Kuala Lumpur, you'll have a delight. Or Penang, somewhere in Malaysia, you'll have the time of your life. Western Europe, people feel comfortable with that. Those to me are your big, mainstays. And then the other ones are more investments, diversification, protecting my assets, having a toe into, getting residence or citizenships that are unique and that offer me true diversification in this, let's call it a new world order, not in the conspiratorial way, just in the way of the world's changing. The West is becoming a little bit less relevant. And then even the further afield in South America, I would add some exotic locations. So, Vanuatu, the citizenship program has really taken a beating. I don't know that you need that unless you just want to really build a very robust passport portfolio. But you can buy property there. They are kind of like the Serbia of the South Pacific, in my opinion. And so tax-free country, very laid back, not a lot of regulations, could be a place to go. If you have the Vanuatu passport, you can fly through Australia or New Zealand transit to get to your home in Vanuatu. Otherwise, you would need a passport that allows you to fly through Australia or New Zealand. And so that could be one. Mauritius is one I was talking to this gentleman about. There is a path to citizenship. It is a bit discretionary, but it could come as fast as 2 years. Very unique, neutral, high-quality passport in Mauritius, one of the 2 countries in Africa that has visa-free travel to Europe, as well as Russia and China and the UK. Very robust country. Almost feels to me when I was there, it's kind of like the Malaysia of the Indian Ocean. Open to immigration, not zero tax, but low tax. Also friendly people, multicultural to some extent, which I like. That's one I would honestly look at. And they have a program. If you buy villas, for example, you can get permanent residence and you can work towards many things from there. That's a place you could spend your winters. Let's say you're in Europe in the summer, you want to be somewhere like Mauritius in the winter. Easier to get to through a place like, you could fly through Istanbul, Qatar, I think Dubai. Very easy to get to, more so than Vanuatu, for example. So if I'm putting together a portfolio, for example, for a ultra high net worth individual like I recently spent the weekend with, I'm looking at Mexico, better than something in California, in my opinion. You've got a lot of creature comforts there, but I think it's going to be a more and more important country in years to come, and I think it's going to become stronger. Europe is your base just to feel comfortable. Maybe that's a summer destination. You actually use that as a plan A, place to hang out with the family. South America, less populated continent. You could be far away from the rest of the chaos of the world. Eastern Europe, yes, it's at Europe's doorstep, but you've got cultures that are beating to their own drummer. Southeast Asia, another creature comfort. Asia, I think, does well in the future. Malaysian real estate, probably not going to grow tremendously in the next 5 to 10 years, but long term, I think, does well. That's a lifestyle versus investment philosophy there as to whether Malaysia is your country. Certainly there are others. Thailand, Cambodia could be an interesting plan B location. Certain people can get Cambodian citizenship by making large investments. That would be a really off-the-grid kind of place. Exotic locations, Mauritius, Vanuatu, I'll even throw in Egypt. $1 million gets you an incredible villa in places like from Cairo to Hurghada. You can get citizenship instantly by doing that. So depending on where you want to go, there's lots of plan B options. If this is something that interests you and you'd like to put together the homes, the residences, the citizenships as a plan B, and you have several $1 million to invest, go to nomadcapitalist.com/mastermind. Check out what we're putting together in terms of these very intimate small group events. Again, we service people who just want holistic plans. So we do that remotely. You can learn about that on our website as well. And that's a more affordable price point. But if you want something that's very intimate, very hands-on, where we're actually looking at opportunities, where we're in citizenship countries, where we're very high touch, flying on planes together, doing the high-class lifestyle that a high-level nomad capitalist would expect, we're putting together a couple of these small group events. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/mastermind. It is going to be certainly a premium price point, and you can learn more about that on the site.